Good evening, everybody. This is the Common Council meeting for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. I see that everybody is present. Will you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Item number C is public comment period. At this time, the council president will recognize members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by the council president, persons may address the council, first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. Are there any members of the public who wish to speak tonight? Sorry, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Megan Dulaski, and I'm the property owner at 1033 South Adams Avenue. I'm on the agenda for tonight, and I've requested a change in zoning at my property. I've been running a licensed family child care center, and I want to expand to group. I have a really long wait list. The need is there. I can't meet the demand without increasing enrollment, so that's what I'm asking for. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to address?
Hello, my name is Barbara Storant, and I live at 312 West Park Street here in town. And I just wanted to add to Megan's request for expansion of her program. I'm a parent of a child in the program and also of students who have gone through Washington Elementary. And there are many reasons why I recommend you consider allowing her for the expansion. And if you have any questions, please do let me know.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the council? Any other citizens? Seeing none, we'll move on to item D, approval of the minutes of the May 11th, 2021 closed session and the June 8th, 2021 regular meeting. We have a motion. Mr. Fisher, what's your motion? Okay. Okay, we have a motion from Mr. Fisher and a second from Mr. Fire. Is there any discussion? If not, please vote. And that motion passes unanimous. Item E is staff updates. Chief, do you mind if we go first now? Oh, Justin's going to go first. Justin is going to have an update on Van de Hey Waters. Justin Casperson, Parks and Recreation Director.
Good evening and thank you. I put at your place some pictures that were taken from today on the Van de Hey Waters Aquatic Center. Giving an update on the pool right now, and the tiling is going on right now. So the tiling inside the pool is happening. We were waiting on the gutters, which was about a week delay, so I was a little backed up for that. We're also waiting on plaster. There seems to be a nationwide shortage of plaster, and it's in high demand. Anyone in the construction trade industry also realizes that with drywall mud, as it is also in high demand. So until we get plaster on site, we really can't announce an opening date. So as soon as we get it, we know we have it, and then we can move forward. So, but as for the pool, light poles went up last week. The concrete walks, the pool deck, the street apron were all completed this week. The perimeter fencing is being installed. So it's an 8-foot black chain link fence that's going around the perimeter. Site furnishings like the bike racks, tables, chairs, trash cans were delivered this week and starting to be set in place. The old loop driveway that used to go around Hefco was removed, and now it's into topsoil, and it's kind of part of the Marshfield Utilities project. Our first lift of asphalt was installed last week. Topsoil, landscaping, and mulch were being done this week. The donor signs and pavers will be installed hopefully this week, hopefully Thursday. The sound system for the place will go in on Monday. Security cameras are set to be installed tomorrow. And then concessions equipment is scheduled to be delivered and installed on Thursday. And then you'll see a picture of some post and rope kind of dividing the family shelter from the rest of the concessions area that was installed last week. Like I kind of mentioned, we would like to make a formal announcement of when opening will be, but we're kind of waiting on plaster. It's not that plaster is delaying us, but we know there's a shortage, and our supplier has told us it'd be here weeks ago and last week and the week after. So we're going to wait and keep shopping around and keep finding it. As soon as we have it on site, then we'll kind of make plans from there. So that's probably the only box that's not checked at this point, because as soon as we have it, we can kind of make a formal announcement. Right now, we're targeting the later part of July, so either July 16th or July 23rd. So those are the 2 Fridays. But I don't want to make anything too formal until we have that on site, and then we can move forward. But everything is going very well. Everything is still on budget. Now it's just a question of whether we can stay on time. I'll take any questions.
Mr. Witzel, you're up first.
Thank you. What's the intention with what's going to be grassy areas? Is that going to be seeded or is that going to be sodded?
Well, there'll be sod inside the fence and then seed outside the fence.
Okay, thank you.
There's irrigation systems inside to keep it from going dormant, which we see now happening in many lawns in the area.
Ms. Spiros.
Hey. Thank you. So Justin, on this picture here,
Yes.
what is that?
That is the 100 Extraordinary Families. We had over 100 families give $1,000 for that shelter. And so that's a reservable shelter for parties or activities, or just open to the public for general use. Obviously, if it's not reserved for a party, people can take that spot and have picnics or pizza.
Table.
Oh, yes.
They're just not chairs yet there.
No, those are picnic tables, so a bench
Okay.
and a table. Yeah.
And then is this pool heated?
Yep.
That's it.
The pool will be heated.
Thank you.
Mr. Hendler.
Thank you, Council President. You mentioned that we're still within budget, correct? As the city's tight budget situation, can the council expect any soft costs that were not originally budgeted?
Yeah, we have no anticipation of going over budget or kind of just spending what we don't need to spend. So right now, everything is on budget and on par. So
Thank you.
we're not going to be spending additional monies that we don't need to for things that we don't need. So right now, we're on budget, and it looks really favorable for us.
Mr. Witzel again.
One more quick question. Has all the fundraising been completed, or are there still opportunities for people, if they wish to be a part of this project, to still reach out and?
We are still accepting fundraising, and we still accept funds, and we're still getting them. We just had a large donation of $5,000 for the sound system a couple weeks ago. So that individual knew they couldn't be recognized because the signs were already done, but they said they weren't doing it for their name to be on a plaque. It was to give to the project. So we still can recognize people. It might just be a little more creative.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Justin? Thanks, Justin. Next up is a presentation of award to Marshfield Fire Department from Tom Loucks, Communications Director.
Well, I'm excited to present this award. It's the Best of Midwest Media Fest. It's through Wisconsin Community Media. It's an organization that we are join with, and they won an Excellence Award. And it's about kitchen safety with Freddie the Fire Truck. And I will have Scott and his team explain what that is.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, so obviously 2020 was a weird year for everyone. We couldn't get in to do public education presentations in the schools. The fire prevention team put their heads together. They brainstormed, they came up with creating this video featuring our robot fire truck and a fire scene. If you haven't seen it, I can certainly send the link out to everyone. John Altman and Matt Wolf were two of the three principal organizers of it. The other one was Hannah Patterson. Unfortunately, she's on her way to Madison with the transfer right now, so she couldn't be here. But Matt was the editor, so the video that you see in its final form was all the result of Matt, and they may be leaving here very soon. Oh, and that's a fire call. See you later, guys. Thank you. So they, it was a department-wide effort. Many of us participated in either filming or we had one firefighter donate his house for us to use for this So they smoked it up, and a lot of positive comments on it, and we're very excited to receive this. We'll find a good place for it in the station, and we thank Tom for submitting it.
Excellent. Anyone have any questions for the chief? Okay, thanks
Thank
very
you.
much. Good job. Item F is council president's comments. Employee recognitions. Lester Sonneman from the street department, 25 years. Scott Owen from the fire department, 25 years. And Tyler Hines from the fire department, 5 years. Congratulations to all of you. Item G is council comments. Any council comments tonight? Seeing none, we'll move on to reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Any reports? Okay, item I is the consent agenda that you have in front of you. And recommended action is to receive and place on file. Mrs. Spiros, your motion.
Place on file.
Very good. Second by Mr. Fire. Are there any comments or questions?
And
Seeing none, please vote. Since there were no items removed from the consent agenda, we'll move on to item K, the second reading of ordinance number 1458 concerning animal impounds, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Council President. This is actually the fourth meeting in a row where we've talked about issues related to dogs and cats, which feels kind of odd, but it should be the final one unless something that I don't know is going to happen. This is the second reading, as you mentioned, of Ordinance 1458. This is to adopt the reduction in hold time, the minimum hold time for animal impounds from 7 days to 4 days. I think I mentioned before, state law actually permitted this 5 or 6 years ago. We chose at that time not to do that, to wait and see how it all played out in terms of MAPS getting up and running, with being the one that takes care of the dogs and cats that are brought in. But we are recommending that hold time be reduced and that the ordinance be approved. And just to let you know, to remind you that if that occurs, then the contract that you approved a few weeks ago with MAPS that is contingent upon that change, because it was baked into that change, will be executed effective July 1st.
Okay, Mr. Hendler, your motion.
yes.
Motion.
Oh, okay, I'll withdraw my motion.
Hey, it says,
Oh, okay. I'll leave my motion.
oh, that's the next one. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, you're recommending approval.
Right.
Okay. And we have a second for Mr. Wagner. Motion is to approve ordinance 1458. Is there any question? Comments? Please vote. And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Item L, first reading of ordinance number 1459, request to rezone property at 1033 South Adams Avenue, parcel 33-06971, from SR3 Single Family Residential to MR12 Multifamily Residential, presented by Josh Miller, Development Services Director.
Thank you, Council President. Megan Daleski is looking to rezone a property at 1033 South Adams Avenue from SR3 to MR12 multifamily. The purpose of the rezoning is to allow for a group daycare center. Back in 2008, this property received a conditional use permit for a group daycare center, which allows you to serve more than 8 children at a time. In 2013, we amended the zoning code and no longer allowed that use under the SR3 district, which used to be the R3 district, which is what the subject property was zoned at the time. So essentially, they were continued to allow to be a group daycare after the zoning took place because they were considered a legal non-conforming use. However, in 2019, the owner at the time discontinued the group daycare, and so it reverted back to an in-family daycare, which is basically 4 to 8 children at a time, and that's allowed by right. So the zoning code basically limits any childcare facilities beyond 8 to commercial districts, mixed-use districts, or MR12 or MR24, which is our multifamily district. So the code rewrite back in 2013 basically removed childcare facilities in most residential areas that were beyond in-home or family daycare facilities. We looked at this when this request came in, realizing that it was an existing use at one point, and basically they lost their non-conforming status. So anytime you discontinue a legal non-conforming status for a period of 12 months or more, it loses that status. So then it basically becomes a non-conformity if they were to reoperate. So that's why she came to us and said, hey, I'd like to reopen this group daycare, and that's when this was flagged. So we looked at a couple of options. We looked at possibly rezoning it to a neighborhood mixed use, which is more of a commercial use. Looked at the MR12 district, and also looked at possibly a zoning code rewrite, which would allow group daycares either as a conditional use or by right in a residential setting. In 2016, we shared with the Plan Commission the concerns that we had of childcare facilities, that we're running out of adequate facilities in the community. That's one thing we hear. We worked with the chamber a few years ago on a study trying to understand what the needs were and how to get around this or how to address this need. And it becomes a big barrier for getting people in the workforce. We just don't have enough childcare spaces to serve the needs of the community. So when we presented this to the Plan Commission as an option to open up more facilities in the community, they didn't want to take it forward as a allowable use in a residential setting. So we decided not to go that route and thought the MR12 district made sense. Now, MR12 does allow for some multifamily in that area. That area is surrounded by mostly single family, but there's two family. There's a couple of CBRFs in the area. But there's a couple different zoning districts from SR2, SR3, and TR6. And so there's kind of a little bit of a variety there. Further to the south, there's some MR24, which is a heavier density multifamily district across 14th Street. The future land use map shows this area as medium density, which requires or wants to see about 3 to 10 units per acre. MR12 allows up to 12 units per acre. But that category in the future land use plan does include single family, two family, and townhouse uses. So the only uses that it would be allowed under the zoning code by right would be multifamily and multiplexes that are not identified in the comp plan. So it's not a completely perfect match, but this is the best that we could come up with to allow for this district, for this use in this location. I think I've covered just about everything that I wanted to at this. Basically, the group daycare, if they were to go forward and the zoning does get approved, a group daycare would require a conditional use permit. So there would be another step in here, which there could be conditions placed on the facility, such as fencing, screening, other things to address the facility. One thing that we didn't address at the Plan Commission that we could have done or could consider is allowing a conditional rezoning. And we actually did this back in December for a parking lot. It was an off-site parking lot that if the applicant needed to rezone a piece of property and then they needed to apply for a conditional use permit for an off-site parking lot, the condition in the rezoning was that if they didn't apply or didn't receive the conditional use permit by a certain date, the rezoning would revert back to the original district. And that's something that we didn't contemplate at the Plan Commission level, but it's something I talked to the applicant today, and they would be willing to do that if that's what it took to get the rezoning. So that would basically protect the council from opening it up to other uses. If they fail to get the conditional use permit, it would just go back to SR3. So that's something, if the council would be interested in, we could bring back an amended ordinance as a consideration. But this was reviewed at the Plan Commission last week. There was a public hearing held. There was no adverse comments about the use. The applicant spoke in favor of it. We do send out notices to 200 feet of adjacent property owners for these uses, and nobody came to speak against it. But so with that, this is the first reading, so there's no request at this time. Final action would be requested at July 13th, but I'd be happy to address any questions.
Mr. Butke.
Thank you. Maybe for the two ladies, there were two there. When did you plan on starting or want to start that?
I keep saying that my goal is early September,
Okay,
But I have a lot of balls rolling that have to all kind of.
okay, so there's no need to move forward with this at this time. To go through the process will be well ahead of that time.
Well, yeah, certainly the earlier we can do it, it just helps everything else be able to kind of pick up to, some things are pending this approval.
So I guess, Josh, at next council meeting, we should be able to make a decision on that then? Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. President. How many children are they planning? It's more than 8, right? How many are you planning on being able to handle at that facility?
Yes, thank you. I do have 8 currently. The floor space that I have would allow for up to 24. That's what I would be applying for, maximum 24.
Okay, what is this is the house on the corner of 11th and Adams. This is a house that's one house in.
One in.
One in. The house on the corner, is that a single family also? Is that a single family use right now?
I don't believe so. I think that's some sort of a group, maybe.
Could you?
That's a 6-bed CBRF.
That's a CBRF. And CBRFs don't have to have a zoning change. They can go anywhere except commercial or residential or industrial. Okay, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions for Josh? Seeing none, thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Oh, you're still up there, the next one. Item M is a request to authorize staff to enter into an agreement for professional service for the creation of TIF District 13 and to prepare a budget resolution for council approval presented by Josh Miller, Development Services.
Thank you. Back when we were talking about the city subdivision in early May, one of the comments was how do we address basically starter housing or affordable housing. Affordable housing is a complex issue that will be addressed, continue to be looked at. But what we wanted to do is really look at how do we get more lots and more starter homes, and a mixed-use TIF is really one of the primary ways to do that because we can pay for some of the infrastructure using TIF dollars and that kind of thing. The mixed-use TIF is complicated. There's a lot of different things to look at when we're developing it, so we can't just put it into a residential area. You can't just create a mixed-use TIF and just only have residential uses for it. The Department of Revenue is very rigid or very strict on what can and cannot be in a mixed-use TIF. So you can have commercial, industrial, and residential. Those are your 3 uses. It has to be comprised at least 50% of those uses, and only 35% of that can be newly platted residential. And that's really what we need is newly platted residential and provide the infrastructure. So I've been looking at this situation or mixed-use TIF potential mixed-use TIF districts with the Economic Development Board for a number of months, I think going back to mid-2000. And we had a number of sites looked at, and this site that we're looking at for TIF 13 is probably the one that was identified as probably the most shovel-ready and highest priority. When we were asked at the city subdivision discussion why we don't go with a mixed-use TIF first is the time it would take to get the TIF district going and then the plat and then the construction, we wouldn't be able to get infrastructure in this year. So that presented a challenge. And so we wanted to go for a project that would allow us to get started earlier. So I included a map in the packet, and the area in the map on the west side is really the area that we'd identified for mixed use or for newly platted residential. There's about 20 acres there. The city does own a portion of that area. So that would open up about 60 lots. So really the requirement from the Department of Revenue is that you have at least no less than 3 units per acre. So it has to be at least that dense or greater. So we'd be looking at mostly single family homes, possibly some duplexes depending on what the zoning would allow. So the other part of that district would include a mix of existing industrial as well as some vacant land, some existing city land, and would include the 3 parcels that were carved out at TID 12 or TID 7. So those are 3 parcels east of Galvin Avenue that we had intended to carve out with this in mind. We didn't know we'd get to this TIF district this quickly. We looked at some preliminary numbers on some of the infrastructure just for the newly platted area, and I think it's over 3,000 linear feet, and looked at about $2.3 million. That doesn't have to all be borne by the city. There could be, we'd want to have some work with the developer and that, but that's not what we're here to decide. Just kind of want to be transparent about some of the numbers we're looking at. But there would also be developer incentives and some possible reconstruction. Hume Avenue is in rough shape, and some of the other streets in that area. So there would be possibility to do that, trail expansion, other things in that area that would be really amenities and a benefit. So when we're looking at creating a TIF district, we have what's called a 12% equalized value rule. So you can't, when you create the district, you can't exceed 12% of the equalized value in either increment of existing districts or the base value of the new district. So right now we have about $117 million of increment value already in current TIF districts. We would propose this district would have about another 23 million of base value. So that we're still well under the 12% rule. And once we go into the next year, 2022, that 23 million is no longer part of that calculation because the base value or the increment is basically goes to zero when we start off. So there's really a lot of capacity that the city has to create a TIF district, even though this is a pretty big base value. The only other big base value that we have in the city was the downtown, which, that was all existing development. And so you have a pretty big base to start with. But I just kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit. Also, TID 2 is closing this year, so that $5 million will come off of that increment value. And in addition, we look at 2024 as possibly closing TID 5, which would be, I think, another 26 million or so. So to certainly have enough capacity to do this. As I touched on before, the mixed-use creation is, especially the TIF district creation, but especially the mixed-use creation is complicated. We generally hire this service out, and we've been working with Ehlers and Associates on the TID 12, and they're pretty much the foremost experts in the state at creating TIF districts. And I probably lean on them a little too much for questions when those come up with TIF, but they're very responsive, and we've had a good working relationship with them. The proposal, if we move forward, we would try to get this done in 3 months. And the reason we'd like to do it quickly is if you create the district before September 30th, you can use January 1st of this year as the base value. Anything done in this year, if you're after that date, you'd be looking at January 1 of 2022, and you lose some potential increments of projects that have gone on in this year. So we can capture some increment right away of projects that are going on currently. So the process would be a 3-phase process. They do a feasibility analysis in the first month, develop a project plan, and get approval for that process. We have a public hearing, joint review board meetings, council approval, and then final joint review board review, and then the state submittal. The initial cost would be about $15,500 for the consultant to do the work. And then as an initial part of that discussion, we'd want to do a wetland delineation on the city, at least on the city land and some of the residential area. There's a history of wetlands in there, and we want to see how far that they've expanded just to make sure that we can get the density that we need. So that would be probably in the neighborhood of $5,000. So as noted before, TIF district creation costs are TIF eligible. So if the district does get created, those costs would be charged to the TIF. We reviewed this with the Economic Development Board earlier this month. They were very supportive of this, excited to see us going forward with this quickly, even after the city subdivision is still in progress. So with that, staff is requesting to approve the attached proposal and authorize staff to enter into an agreement for professional service with Ehlers and Associates, and direct staff to prepare a budget resolution for council consideration.
Hey, Mr. Bucky, your motion.
Motion to approve.
Okay. Second by Mr. Fire. Discussion by Mr. Wagner.
Thank you, sir. As some of you know, I also serve on the county board, the Wood County Board. And one of my assignments on the Wood County Board is to sit on the Workforce Development Board. But specifically the CEO consortium, and the CEO stands for county elected officials. So I'm the one elected official from the county that sits on the 9-member board. We had a meeting last Thursday, and at that meeting, one of the things we do that I think is one of the great benefits of the CEO consortium is we go around, Robin, and talk about what's going on in our counties. And I mentioned that, that we were, well, we talked about the jail, just so the guys, my friends in the south part of Wood County won't feel. We talked about the jail, but we also talked about the city subdivision going in. And they were they thought that was good. And I said, we also felt that if we didn't do it, that our friends, my good friends in Portage County and Plover would benefit from it greatly. And that comment was followed immediately by a comment from Plover that says, yes, we thank you, Mr. Wagner. We would thank you very much if you didn't do it. But they also mentioned that they just sold, I think they had 3 40-acre parcels. And they just sold the next to the last one available for housing. They sold it to a developer in Plover to develop workforce housing. So this is a region-wide need. It's something we need to do, and the sooner we get started on it, and the sooner we get into the affordable housing market, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, this is just exactly what we have to do. Godspeed, my friend. Do it.
Thank you.
Mr. Witzel.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've talked in the past as we close TIF districts that there is some available monies that can be potentially gathered for a year. We didn't do it on the TIF that we're closing this year, but we're looking at the next one. How do those monies play into that, or is that a totally separate bucket that we're using for a totally different?
Well, the vision would be to have that money play very heavily into what we do for affordable housing. My task at the end of this year, if we don't keep creating TIF districts, would be to develop an affordable housing extension program. So when we do create that or have that additional revenue from the TIF district, we would know what we're going to do with it, and we'd have a program set up. So whether it's a rehab program or infrastructure or whatever, people would be prepared for when that district closes. Now the anticipation is 2024, I believe, for TID 5. So I don't know if it's 2024 or 2025. We'd have about $600,000 worth of revenue to spend on affordable housing. 75% of that has to be for affordable housing if we use it. So we'd be looking at a good chunk. We also, I know we've got the stimulus here that's, I think it's in our bank account now, at least some of it. I mean, some of that could be used for affordable housing. We've got a lot of, opportunities like that. And there's other grants and things like that. But we definitely want to identify a program and how we're going to utilize this money in advance. So if people are looking at Marshfield for affordable housing, like outside contractors or developers, they'll be able to say, hey, you got this program, and maybe tie it to an opportunity zone or another TIF district. But this mixed use TIF doesn't really address that $600,000 thing. It could, but I think what we're looking at is more workforce housing, and then we'll scale down to the affordable housing in the next efforts.
So a totally separate project. This is going to handle it all of itself, and then that'll be used for a different project down the road.
More than likely, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion, questions? Okay, the motion is to authorize the execution of an agreement and direct the preparation of a budget resolution for council approval. Please vote. Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Item N, a request to approve the appointment of Tony Abney of 2601 West 5th Street to the Housing Rehabilitation Committee to fill a position vacated by John Bauer that expires in 2022. Mr. Abney replaced Mr. Bauer at the bank, and he is slotted to fill into this position too as well. We need a banker on that committee. So, Mr. Witzel, your motion?
Move to approve.
Okay, a second by Mr. Fisher. Are there any discussion on that? Seeing none, please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Item O is a request to approve the appointment of Keith Lemoyne from Heinzen Printing to the Business Improvement District to fill a vacant position that expires in 2024. Mr. Witzel, you're up.
Move to approve.
Okay, we have a motion to approve and a second by Mr. Varsho. Is there any discussion on that?
Mr. Bucky, were you trying to amend the motion?
I was.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So we have a motion to approve the appointment of Mr. Lemoyne. Please vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Which brings us to item number P, or letter P. Adjourn to closed session under Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paragraph 1, paragraph E. Deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other special public business, specified public business, whenever competitive or bargaining reasons are involved, specifically request to purchase residential lots in a new city subdivision. There are two cases we're going to consider. We have a motion from Mr. Witzel, I assume, to go into closed
Yes, move to
session.
adjourn to closed session.
And a second by Mr. Fire, please vote. And that motion passes.
Just wait till the next. Bring that one. I want to hear everybody stick with the same.
Okay, we're back in open session and there's no action on the matters discussed in closed session. Are there any suggested items for future agendas? Mr. Witzel? Oh, okay. Next up, motion to adjourn by Mr. Witzel, second by Mr. Fischel. Please vote. And we're adjourned.